The war chamber fell silent as Commander Zethkar stepped forward, his forearms clasped behind his massive frame. The assembled officers of the Galactic Coalition leaned in, their various alien forms creating an intimidating audience. Today, the veteran Korthak commander would finally speak about what every military leader in the galaxy wanted to know: what it was really like to fight humans. "You want to know about the humans?" Zethkar began, his voice carrying the weight of countless battles. "You've heard the stories. You think they're exaggerated. I'm here to tell you they're not." The room remained perfectly still. Zethkar had led the Korthak Empire's most elite forces for over 3 decades. His people were known throughout the galaxy as the ultimate warriors, 7 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating, with reflexes faster than most species could even perceive. They had conquered 47 worlds before encountering Earth. "When we first received intelligence about humanity, we laughed," Zethkar continued, his mandibles clicking in what passed for bitter amusement among his kind. A species that had barely reached their own moon. No natural armor, no claws, no enhanced senses. They seemed like the easiest conquest in our empire's history. Admiral Vextai of the Centaurian Navy shifted uncomfortably. "Commander, our records show the initial invasion of Earth lasted 7 years. For a supposedly easy conquest, that seems excessive." Zethkar's compound eyes fixed on the Admiral. 7 years, yes, and in those 7 years, we learned that everything we thought we knew about warfare was wrong. He activated a holographic display showing Earth as it appeared when the Korthak fleet first arrived. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. A peaceful-looking world with no orbital defenses and primitive technology. "Our initial bombardment destroyed their major military installations within hours," Zethkar explained. "Their nuclear weapons were primitive compared to our shields. Their aircraft were toys. Their ground forces used projectile weapons that barely scratched our armor. By all logical calculations, the war should have ended that first day." The assembled officers nodded. This matched their understanding of human capabilities. "But humans," Zethkar's voice took on a tone that sent chills through the room, "don't follow logical calculations." He changed the hologram to show footage from the first ground assault. Korthak warriors towering over human defenders advanced through a burning city. The humans fell back, their weapons largely ineffective. "This is how it started," Zethkar said. "We took their capital cities. We scattered their armies. We thought victory was assured. Then we learned our first lesson about humans. They don't know how to surrender." The footage shifted to show something that made several officers gasp. Human civilians, including their young, fighting alongside soldiers. Elderly humans carrying explosive devices. Children no taller than a Korthak's waist setting traps that could cripple a warrior. "Every human became a combatant," Zethkar explained. "Not just their military. Their entire species turned into an army. They used tactics we had never encountered. They would sacrifice 10 of their own to kill one of ours, and they considered it a victory." General Thoxran of the militant collective leaned forward. "Surely your superior technology gave you an advantage." Zethkar's laugh was hollow. "Technology? Let me tell you about human adaptability. We had energy weapons that could cut through their strongest metals. Within 6 months, they had developed armor using our own fallen warriors' equipment. We had aerial superiority. They learned to fight underground, in tunnels we couldn't navigate. We had advanced communications. They learned to intercept and decode our transmissions. The hologram now showed human fighters wearing patchwork armor, made from Korthak technology, carrying hybrid weapons that combined human ingenuity with alien materials. But the real shock came when we realized they were learning faster than we were adapting, Zethkar continued. Every battle taught them something new about us. Every defeat made them stronger. They studied our weaknesses with a precision that was unsettling. He paused, his massive form seeming to shrink slightly at the memory. The turning point came in their city called Stalingrad. No, they called it something else by then. Moscow. We had surrounded it completely, cut off all supply lines. The humans inside should have starved or surrendered within days. The room was dead silent. They held for 8 months, Zethkar said quietly. 8 months of urban warfare that cost us more warriors than the conquest of 12 worlds. They turned every building into a fortress, every street into a killing field. They used their own destroyed city as a weapon against us. The holographic footage showed the aftermath of the siege. a moonscape of rubble where Korthak warriors lay fallen among human defenders. We won that battle, Zethkar said, but it wasn't a victory. We learned that humans fight differently when their home is threatened. They don't fight for glory or conquest like we do. They don't fight for territory like the Centaurians. They don't fight for resources like the militants. They fight for something we didn't understand at the time. What? Admiral Vextai whispered. Each other, Zethkar replied. Humans will die for other humans they've never met. They'll sacrifice themselves for humans not yet born. They fight for an idea of what their species could become. It's not logical. It's not strategic. It's not anything we had encountered in 50 years of conquest. He deactivated the hologram and faced his audience directly. That was when I realized we weren't fighting a species. He said, we were fighting something else entirely. Something that turned every setback into motivation, every loss into rage, every small victory into inspiration for greater resistance. The commander's voice grew quieter, forcing everyone to strain to hear him. The humans had a saying they would shout during battles. I learned it from our interrogations. Remember the fallen. At first, we thought it was just primitive warrior culture. We were wrong. It was a promise that every human death would be avenged, that no sacrifice would be forgotten, that they would fight until either we were gone or they were extinct. The silence stretched on as the implications sank in. And that, Zethkar concluded, was just the beginning of what we learned about fighting humans. Commander Zethkar moved to the tactical display, his claws clicking against the control surface as he pulled up new images. The assembled alien officers watched intently, many still processing the revelations from his opening remarks about human tenacity. After the siege of Moscow, our high command decided to change tactics, Zethkar continued. If humans wouldn't surrender when defeated conventionally, we would break their spirit through terror. We would target their civilian populations, their cultural centers, their young, force them to choose between resistance and the survival of their species. The hologram showed massive Korthak dreadnoughts positioning themselves over human population centers. This decision, Zethkar said slowly, was our second major mistake. We thought we understood how species respond to existential threats. We had seen it on dozens of worlds. Fear breaks resistance, terror breeds submission. Admiral Vextai shifted uncomfortably. Did the strategy succeed initially? For exactly 18 hours, Zethkar replied. We destroyed 3 of their major population centers simultaneously, killed approximately 12 million humans in the span of a day. We waited for their surrender transmissions. He paused, his mandibles clicking in what his species recognized as deep unease. Instead, we got something we had never encountered in 50 years of conquest. Every human military unit across their planet went completely silent for 6 hours. Not retreating, not fleeing, just silent. Our intelligence officers thought we had broken them. Psychologically. The tactical display shifted to show heat signatures across Earth's surface during those 6 hours. Millions of human signatures clustering in patterns that defied explanation. Then they spoke, Zethkar continued, his voice carrying an edge of something that might have been respect. Not to us, to each other. Every human communication channel activated simultaneously. They weren't surrendering. They were coordinating. General Thoxran leaned forward. Coordinating what? Total war, Zethkar answered simply. Not military resistance, not territorial defense. Complete species mobilization for the extermination of our forces. The hologram now displayed what happened next. Human civilians dismantling their own infrastructure to build weapons. Factories that had produced consumer goods overnight becoming munitions plants. Children as young as 10 learning to manufacture explosives. Within 72 hours of our terror bombing, humans had converted their entire civilization into a war machine, Zethkar explained. They stopped producing art, entertainment, luxury goods, unnecessary technology. Every resource, every mind, every working hour became dedicated to killing Korthak. The display showed the devastating efficiency of this transformation. Human industrial output had tripled in a week, but everything they produced was designed to kill, maim, or destroy Korthak forces. But that wasn't the most disturbing part, Zethkar continued. The most disturbing part was how they changed psychologically. Before our terror attacks, humans showed mercy to captured Korthak warriors. They followed something they called rules of war that limited how they would fight us. His voice grew quieter, more serious. After we killed 12 million of their civilians, they stopped taking prisoners entirely. Not because they were ordered to, because they collectively decided that our species didn't deserve to survive. The room fell into uncomfortable silence. Several officers exchanged glances that spoke of shared unease. I was captured during a raid on one of their hidden facilities. Zethkar continued. This was 4 months after our terror attacks. I expected torture, interrogation, the standard treatment of enemy prisoners. Instead, I was brought before a human female who couldn't have been more than half my height. He activated a new hologram showing security footage of his interrogation. She didn't ask me for military intelligence. She didn't threaten me or demand information about our fleet positions. She asked me one question. Do you have offspring? Zethkar's compound eyes seemed to lose focus as he remembered. I told her yes. I had 3 spawn in their youth stages back on Korthak Prime. She nodded and said, Good. I want you to understand what it feels like to know they'll die because of what your people chose to do. Then she showed me something that still haunts my dreams. The hologram displayed human industrial facilities that had been completely retooled. Instead of building defensive weapons or spacecraft, they were manufacturing something else entirely. Biological weapons, Zethkar said quietly, specifically designed to target Korthak physiology. They had analyzed our fallen warriors, studied our biological weaknesses, and created pathogens that would kill only our species. General Thoxeran's breathing apparatus whistled in shock. That violates every galactic convention of warfare. The humans didn't care about galactic conventions, Zethkar replied. They had decided that if we wanted to play by rules that included murdering their young, they would abandon rules entirely. And their biological weapons weren't just designed to kill us quickly. He changed the display to show detailed schematics that made several officers recoil. These pathogens were engineered to cause maximum suffering before death. Slow breakdown of our nervous systems, failure of our respiratory organs over weeks, complete immune system collapse that would make our final days agony. They wanted every Korthak death to serve as a warning to others. The human female in the recording spoke again. We've already deployed these weapons on 17 of your occupied worlds. Your people there have maybe 2 months before symptoms become noticeable, 6 months before death. But here's what I really want you to understand. Zethkar's voice became barely audible. She told me that humans had developed the cure at the same time they created the weapon. They could save every infected Korthak with a simple injection, but they had collectively decided they wouldn't. Not unless we immediately withdrew from Earth and returned every human we had taken as slaves, he continued. And not unless our high command turned over every officer who had participated in the terror bombings for what they called war crimes trials. The recording showed the human female leaning closer to the camera, but the part that still gives me nightmares, Zethkar said, was her final statement. She said, We know your people think this makes us monsters, but we need you to understand something important. This isn't our nature. This isn't who we want to be. But you made us choose between being monsters and being extinct. We choose monsters. Every time. And we'll remember that choice long after your species is gone. Zethkar deactivated the hologram and faced his audience. That was when I truly understood what we were fighting, he said. Not warriors. Not even a military species. We were fighting a species that could transform itself into anything necessary for survival, and they had decided that our extinction was necessary. The silence in the room was profound. The biological weapons worked exactly as designed, Zethkar concluded. Our colonies fell within the predicted time frame. But the humans kept their word. When our high command agreed to their terms, they provided the cures. They saved the Korthak they had condemned to death. His mandibles clicked slowly. That's when I realized the most terrifying truth about humans. They're not monsters. They just refuse to lose. The War Council chamber remained silent as Commander Zethkar prepared to continue his account. Several officers had moved closer, drawn by the horrifying fascination of his revelations about human warfare capabilities. Others seemed to have shifted back, as if distance could protect them from the implications of what they were hearing. The biological weapon deployment should have ended the war, Zethkar resumed, his voice carrying the weight of painful memory. Our high command agreed to human terms. We withdrew from Earth. We released their captured populations. We even handed over the officers they demanded for trial. But we made a critical error in judgment. Admiral Vextai's tentacles writhed nervously. What error? We assumed that ending the war meant humans would return to their previous state, Zethkar replied. We thought they would go back to being the peaceful, divided species we had initially encountered. We believed the temporary transformation we had witnessed was just that, temporary. The tactical display activated again, showing Earth 6 months after the Korthak withdrawal. Instead of the expected return to normal civilization, the planet buzzed with unprecedented activity. Humans didn't demobilize, Zethkar explained. They had tasted what total species unity could accomplish. They had seen what they were capable of when every human worked toward a single goal, and they decided they liked it. The hologram showed massive construction projects across every continent, space elevators rising from the surface, orbital shipyards taking shape, mining operations on every celestial body in their solar system. Within 1 standard year of our departure, humans had tripled their industrial capacity, Zethkar continued. But they weren't building consumer goods or returning to their previous pursuits. They were building a war machine designed to hunt down every Korthak in the galaxy. General Thoxeran's breathing accelerated. That's impossible. Species don't maintain war footing without an immediate threat. Humans do, Zethkar said simply, because to them we were still an immediate threat. As long as the Korthak Empire existed anywhere in the galaxy, humans considered their species to be in mortal danger. And they decided that was unacceptable. The display showed the first human warships emerging from Earth's orbital construction facilities. They were unlike anything in the galactic database. Asymmetrical designs that prioritized function over form, bristling with weapons and defensive systems. We monitored their shipbuilding from our border systems, Zethkar explained. Our intelligence estimated that humans were constructing vessels at a rate that would take them several decades to pose a serious threat to our core worlds. Another miscalculation. He changed the view to show the complete human fleet that had emerged just 18 months later, hundreds of warships, each one larger and more heavily armed than Korthak dreadnoughts. 18 months, Zethkar repeated. From primitive projectile weapons to a fleet that outgunned our entire armada. How? The answer appeared on screen. Footage of human construction techniques that defied conventional engineering wisdom. Humans don't build ships the way we do, Zethkar explained. We craft each vessel individually with pride in artistry and tradition. Humans built their warships like they built everything else during their total war mobilization with ruthless efficiency and complete disregard for anything except functionality. The hologram showed human shipyards that operated around the clock, with multiple vessels in various stages of construction simultaneously. Humans working in environments that would kill most galactic species, using automated systems that required no rest or maintenance breaks. But the ships themselves weren't what made our strategists panic, Zethkar continued. It was the crews. New footage appeared showing human naval personnel, unlike the diverse species that typically served in galactic fleets. Every human crew member appeared to share an identical mindset and purpose. Every human in their fleet was a volunteer, Zethkar explained. Not drafted, not assigned. They had volunteered for what they openly called the Extinction Mission. Their stated goal was to hunt down and eliminate every Korthak in the galaxy. Admiral Vextai's color shifted to the pale blue that indicated deep distress in her species. Surely they didn't mean total genocide? Zethkar's mandibles clicked in bitter amusement. They broadcast their intentions across all known communication frequencies. I still remember the exact words of their declaration. A new hologram activated, showing a human female in naval uniform standing before a backdrop of the assembled human fleet. To the Korthak Empire, and any who would support them, the recording began. We tried peace. We tried coexistence. We tried following rules of civilized warfare. You taught us that mercy is weakness and that our survival requires your extinction. We are excellent students. The human commander's eyes held a cold certainty that sent chills through the assembled alien officers. We will hunt every Korthak ship until none remain in space. We will blockade every Korthak world until your populations starve. We will sterilize every planet you have ever touched, until no trace of your species exists. This is not negotiable. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Zethkar deactivated the recording. They kept that promise with a precision that still terrifies our military analysts. The display showed the systematic destruction of Korthak border worlds. Human fleets appeared without warning, eliminated all resistance, and moved on to the next target with mechanical efficiency. They didn't occupy our worlds, Zethkar explained. They didn't steal resources or territory. They simply erased every Korthak presence and left the planets uninhabitable. Scorched earth tactics applied to interstellar warfare. General Thoxran leaned forward. How long did this campaign last? 3 years, Zethkar replied. 3 years to reduce the Korthak Empire from 47 systems to 0. 3 years to hunt down every Korthak ship, every Korthak colony, every Korthak outpost in known space. The hologram showed the final engagement, a massive human fleet surrounding Korthak Prime itself. The siege of our homeworld lasted 6 months, Zethkar continued. Not because we could resist them, but because they wanted us to understand what was happening. They wanted every Korthak to know that their extinction was deliberate, methodical, and completely avoidable. They broadcast messages to our population daily, he said, reminding us that this was the consequence of our choice to target their civilians. That every Korthak death was payment for the 12 million humans we had killed. The final image showed Korthak Prime's once proud cities reduced to ash and rubble. But here's what truly demonstrates the difference between humans and every other species in the galaxy, Zethkar said quietly. In those final 6 months, while they systematically destroyed our civilization, they also saved every Korthak who renounced violence. Several officers gasped in surprise. Any Korthak who publicly rejected their species, military culture, and swore an oath of permanent pacifism was relocated to neutral worlds, Zethkar explained. Humans didn't want to commit genocide. They wanted to eliminate the threat. Once a Korthak was no longer a threat, humans protected them. His voice grew even quieter. That's how I survived. I took their oath. I renounced violence in all forms. And they kept their word. They gave me safety, purpose, and a chance to understand what I had been part of. Zethkar faced his audience directly. The Korthak Empire fell, not because humans were stronger, but because they were willing to become whatever was necessary to ensure their survival, and they never forgot the lesson that mercy can be mistaken for weakness. Commander Zethkar paused, allowing his audience to absorb the magnitude of what he had described. The destruction of an entire galactic empire in just 3 years had shaken many of the assembled officers. But as he watched their faces, he realized they still didn't understand the full implications of human military capability. You're thinking about the wrong lesson, Zethkar said, reading their expressions. You're focusing on the extinction of the Korthak Empire, but that's not the important part of this story. Admiral Vextai's tentacles writhed in confusion. Commander, the systematic destruction of a 47-system empire isn't important? No, Zethkar replied firmly. Because the truly terrifying aspect of human warfare isn't their capacity for destruction. It's their capacity for precision. The tactical display activated again, but instead of showing battles and destruction, it displayed detailed statistics and charts. During their 3-year campaign against the Korthak Empire, humans engaged in over 800 separate military actions, Zethkar explained. Fleet battles, planetary sieges, space station assaults, convoy raids. In every single engagement, they achieved their tactical objectives with minimal losses. The data on screen was staggering. Human casualty rates that were impossibly low compared to typical galactic warfare statistics. Our military analysts spent years trying to understand how humans achieved this level of efficiency, Zethkar continued. We studied their tactics, their technology, their command structures. We found the answer in something we had completely overlooked. General Thoxran leaned forward intently. What did you discover? Humans learn from every mistake, but more importantly, they learn from every success, Zethkar replied. Every battle they fought taught them something new that they immediately incorporated into their next engagement. Not just the commanders or the strategic planners. Every human soldier became a tactical innovator. The display showed battlefield footage from early human engagements compared to later ones. The difference was remarkable. Human forces evolved their combat techniques in real time, adapting to each new situation with fluid creativity. In our first encounters, humans fought like any other species, following established doctrine, using predictable strategies, Zethkar explained. By the end of the war, They had developed completely new forms of warfare that our military academies are still trying to understand. He highlighted specific innovations. Human Marines who could reconfigure their equipment mid-battle for different mission requirements, pilots who modified their ship's weapon systems during combat, engineers who could reprogram enemy technology to work against its creators. But the real breakthrough came when we realized that humans don't just adapt their tools and tactics, Zethkar said. They adapt themselves. The hologram showed medical data that made several officers recoil. Human soldiers undergoing biological and cybernetic modifications to improve their combat effectiveness. Every human who volunteered for military service also volunteered for enhancement, Zethkar explained. Not forced modification like some species practice, but willing transformation to become more effective warriors. The data showed the extent of these modifications: enhanced reflexes, improved strength, augmented sensory capabilities, direct neural interfaces with weapons and equipment. Within 2 years of beginning their campaign, the average human soldier had capabilities that exceeded our elite warriors, Zethkar continued. But they didn't stop there. New footage appeared showing human special forces units that seemed to blur the line between biological and mechanical. Soldiers who could interface directly with any technology, adapt to any environment, survive in conditions that would kill most galactic species. They call these units Reapers, Zethkar said quietly. Humans who had volunteered for the most extreme modifications available, complete psychological conditioning for warfare, biological enhancement beyond normal human limits, technological integration that made them living weapons. The recording showed Reapers in action, moving with inhuman speed and precision, coordinating attacks with perfect synchronization, eliminating targets with efficiency that bordered on supernatural. I fought against a Reaper unit during the siege of Korthak Prime, Zethkar said, his voice carrying the weight of traumatic memory. 6 humans against 200 of our elite warriors. The battle lasted 43 minutes. 57 Korthak survived. The silence in the room was absolute. But here's what you need to understand about these enhanced humans, Zethkar continued. They retained their humanity. Despite all the modifications, despite the psychological conditioning, they still made decisions based on human values. He displayed footage from the final battle for Korthak Prime. Reaper units moving through the city. But instead of indiscriminate slaughter, they were carefully distinguishing between combatants and civilians. Even in their most enhanced form, humans followed rules of engagement that prioritized the protection of non-combatants, Zethkar explained. They could have killed every Korthak on the planet in a matter of hours. Instead, they spent weeks ensuring that only those who posed a direct threat were eliminated. Admiral Vextai's color had shifted to the deep purple that indicated overwhelming confusion in her species. Commander, you're describing beings that are simultaneously ruthlessly efficient killers and paragons of moral restraint. How is that possible? Zethkar's mandibles clicked in what his species recognized as profound respect, mixed with fear. Because humans understand something that no other species in the galaxy has grasped, he replied. The difference between capability and intention. They developed the ability to destroy any threat completely, but they only used that ability when they determined it was necessary. The hologram shifted to show post-war reconstruction efforts. The same Reaper units that had devastated Korthak military forces were now helping to rebuild civilian infrastructure on neutral worlds where Korthak refugees had been relocated. After the war ended, these enhanced humans didn't retire or return to civilian life, Zethkar explained. They became something unprecedented in galactic history, a permanent peacekeeping force dedicated to preventing the kind of conflict that had made their creation necessary. The display showed human Reaper units responding to conflicts across the galaxy, not as conquerors or occupiers, but as arbitrators with the power to enforce their decisions absolutely. Any species considering aggressive expansion now has to account for human intervention, Zethkar said. Not human politics or human diplomacy, but humans with the demonstrated ability and willingness to end entire civilizations that threaten others. General Thoxran's breathing apparatus wheezed nervously. Are you saying humans have appointed themselves galactic peacekeepers? No, Zethkar replied. I'm saying humans have become galactic predators that only hunt other predators. They've positioned themselves as the ultimate deterrent against the kind of imperial expansion that the Korthak Empire represented. He paused, allowing this concept to sink in. Every military leader in this room is now making the same calculation that every species has had to make since humans achieved interstellar capability. Zethkar continued, "Is whatever you want to accomplish worth the risk of teaching humans that your species poses a threat to their survival?" The hologram displayed current human fleet positions, small groups of ships positioned throughout the galaxy, close enough to respond to any major conflict within days. Because once humans decide you're a threat, Zethkar concluded, they don't just defeat you. They evolve specifically to hunt your species, and they remember every lesson forever. The weight of Zethkar's revelations settled over the assembled officers like a heavy shroud. Many had come to this briefing expecting to learn tactical information about human military capabilities. Instead, they were confronting the reality that humanity had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy. "I can see the question in your minds," Zethkar continued, his compound eyes scanning the room. "You're wondering if there's any way to coexist with humans without triggering their protective instincts. The answer is more complex than you might expect." He activated a new holographic display showing diplomatic records from the years following the Korthak War. Humans didn't retreat into isolation after demonstrating their military supremacy, Zethkar explained. Instead, they did something that surprised every intelligence service in the galaxy. They actively sought peaceful contact with every species they could reach. The display showed human diplomatic vessels approaching dozens of different worlds, not with fleets of warships, but with small, obviously non-threatening craft carrying cultural exchanges and trade proposals. But these weren't normal diplomatic missions, Zethkar continued. Humans approached each species with complete transparency about what they had done to the Korthak Empire. They made sure everyone understood exactly what humans were capable of, and then offered friendship. Admiral Vextai's tentacles twisted in confusion. They advertised their capacity for genocide as a diplomatic strategy? "Brilliant, isn't it?" Zethkar replied, his mandibles clicking with reluctant admiration. By demonstrating their power and then choosing not to use it, humans positioned themselves as the ultimate honest brokers. Every species knew that human promises came with the backing of absolute force, but also with genuine commitment to peaceful resolution. The hologram showed the results: trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts spreading throughout the galaxy as species after species chose to align themselves with human interests rather than risk human opposition. Within 5 years of the Korthak War's end, humans had built the most extensive diplomatic network in galactic history, Zethkar explained. Not through conquest or coercion, but through the simple demonstration that cooperation with humans was infinitely preferable to conflict with them. General Thoxren shifted uncomfortably. "Commander, you make this sound like humans achieved galactic dominance through fear." "No," Zethkar corrected. "Humans achieved galactic influence through respect backed by fear. There's a crucial difference." The display changed to show human humanitarian operations across the galaxy. Disaster relief efforts, medical assistance programs, technological sharing initiatives, all provided without apparent expectation of return. Humans didn't demand tribute or submission from their new allies, Zethkar explained.
Instead, they offered assistance with the same efficiency they had applied to warfare.
Species that accepted human friendship found themselves receiving aid that dramatically improved their quality of life. The statistics were remarkable. Worlds that had established diplomatic relations with humans showed increased life expectancy, technological advancement, and economic prosperity across the board. But here's what made human diplomacy truly effective, Zethkar continued. They never forgot that they were warriors first. Every human diplomat, every human aid worker, every human trader carried the implicit understanding that they represented a species that could end civilizations if sufficiently provoked. He displayed recordings of human diplomatic negotiations. The humans were polite, reasonable, and genuinely interested in mutual benefit, but there was an underlying steel in their demeanor that reminded everyone exactly who they were dealing with. "I witnessed one such negotiation personally," Zethkar said. The Valdari hegemony was attempting to expand into territory claimed by the peaceful Altarian collective. Both sides requested human Mediation. The hologram showed the meeting. Representatives from two very different species sitting across from a single human diplomat who appeared completely relaxed and unarmed. The human negotiator listened to both positions for 6 hours, Zethkar recounted. She asked thoughtful questions, explored creative compromises, and genuinely tried to find a solution that would satisfy both parties. The Valdari delegates became increasingly aggressive when their territorial claims were questioned. The recording showed the Valdari representative standing and making what was clearly a threat toward the Altarians. The human diplomat's response was educational, Zethkar continued. She calmly asked the Valdari delegate to sit down and reconsider his position. When he refused and began making direct threats against Altarian civilians, she stood up. The recording showed the human woman rising from her chair with fluid grace. Despite being smaller than either alien species present, her presence suddenly dominated the room. She spoke in the same calm, reasonable tone she had used throughout the negotiation. Zethkar continued. Delegate Vexmore, I need to remind you that humans have a standing policy regarding threats against civilian populations. We consider such threats to be acts of war against humanity itself. The Valdari delegate in the recording visibly paled, his aggressive posture immediately deflating. However, the human continued, since this appears to be a misunderstanding rather than a formal declaration of hostile intent, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear those words. I suggest you pretend you didn't say them. Shall we continue our discussion about equitable territorial arrangements? Zethkar paused the recording. The negotiation concluded within 2 hours. The Valdari agreed to a compromise that gave them significantly less territory than they had originally demanded, and they thanked the human diplomat for her fairness. Admiral Vextai's color had shifted to the deep blue of contemplation. The human never actually threatened the Valdari. Exactly, Zethkar confirmed. She simply reminded them of existing human policy and gave them an opportunity to avoid triggering it. That's the essence of human diplomacy. They provide clear boundaries, reasonable alternatives, and genuine opportunities for peaceful resolution. The display showed dozens of similar diplomatic interventions. In each case, human mediators achieved resolutions that protected smaller species from aggressive neighbors without requiring military action. But what happens when diplomacy fails? General Thoxran asked quietly. Zethkar's expression grew solemn. I've witnessed that too. 3 years after the Korthak War, the Nexari Dominion decided to test human resolve. They believed that humans were bluffing about their commitment to protect civilian populations. The hologram showed a massive fleet of Nexari warships approaching a human-protected world inhabited by refugees from various conflicts. The Nexari had studied human military capabilities and concluded that humans were spread too thin across the galaxy to effectively defend every world under their protection. Zethkar explained. They planned a quick strike that would capture the refugee world before humans could respond. They were wrong, he continued simply. The display showed what happened next. Human Reaper units materialized throughout the Nexari fleet, using technology that still defied explanation. Not ships or assault pods, individual enhanced humans appearing directly inside enemy vessels. 12 Reapers infiltrated 47 Nexari capital ships simultaneously, Zethkar recounted. The entire Nexari fleet was disabled within 38 minutes. Not destroyed, disabled. Every ship left intact but completely inoperable. The recording showed Nexari crew members being systematically but non-lethally subdued throughout their fleet. The efficiency was terrifying in its precision. The lead Reaper then broadcast a message to the Nexari High Command. Zethkar continued. I was serving as a human military advisor at the time and witnessed the transmission personally. A new hologram activated, showing a human Reaper removing his helmet to reveal a face that was still recognizably human, despite obvious technological augmentation. To the Nexari Dominion, the Reaper's message began. You have attempted an unprovoked attack on civilians under human protection. This constitutes an act of war against humanity. However, we recognize that poor judgment is not necessarily malicious intent. The Reaper's enhanced eyes seemed to look directly through the camera at the Nexari leadership. Your fleet is intact, but inoperable. Your crews are unharmed but restrained. You have 24 hours to withdraw all Nexari forces to your home system and formally renounce any territorial claims outside Nexari space. If you comply, your ships will be repaired and returned. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why the Korthik Empire no longer exists. Zethkar deactivated the recording. The Nexari complied within 6 hours. That demonstration taught the galaxy an important lesson about human military philosophy. He continued. Humans prefer to win wars without fighting them. They'd rather disable than destroy, capture than kill, deter than devastate. But their capacity for total destruction remains absolute. The hologram displayed the current state of galactic politics, a complex web of alliances and agreements all centered around human mediation and protection services. Today, requesting human intervention has become the standard solution to interspecies conflicts. Zethkar explained, not because anyone fears human conquest, but because everyone trusts human judgment backed by human power. He faced his audience directly. The galaxy is more peaceful now than it has been in recorded history, not because species have become less aggressive, but because aggression has become too costly to consider. Humans have created a system where cooperation is always more beneficial than conflict. General Thoxeron's breathing had steadied. So the secret to coexisting with humans is simply not threatening others? Precisely, Zethkar confirmed. Humans have no interest in controlling other species or claiming territory. They only care about preventing the kind of large-scale suffering that their own species experienced. As long as you're not planning to conquer, enslave, or exterminate others, humans will treat you as friends and allies. The silence in the room had shifted from fearful to contemplative. But remember, Zethkar added quietly, humans never forget. Every species they've had to fight is remembered forever. Every lesson they've learned is passed down to future generations. The peace we enjoy today exists because humans are willing to be the galaxy's apex predators, hunting only those who prey on others. Commander Zethkar stood quietly for a moment, allowing his audience to process everything they had heard. The War Council chamber that had begun the session filled with curiosity and professional interest now carried an atmosphere of profound respect, mixed with healthy caution. Before I conclude this briefing, Zethkar said, I want to address the question I know you're all thinking but are afraid to ask. Admiral Vextai's tentacles curled nervously. What question is that, Commander? What would happen if someone actually managed to defeat humanity? Zethkar replied. What if some species developed technology or strategies that could overcome human military capabilities? The room fell into absolute silence. It was indeed the question that haunted every military strategist who had studied human warfare. I spent 5 years analyzing this scenario while serving as a human military consultant. Zethkar continued. The answer is both simple and terrifying. He activated the holographic display one final time, showing Earth as it appeared in current long-range scans. The planet bustled with activity, but something was different about the construction patterns and orbital installations. Humans have never stopped preparing for war, Zethkar explained. Even during the most peaceful periods of their galactic diplomacy, human engineers and scientists have been developing what they call contingency measures. The display zoomed in to show massive installations hidden throughout the human solar system. Space stations that dwarfed anything seen during the Korthak War, manufacturing facilities that could produce entire fleets in weeks, and defensive systems that turned every planet and moon into a fortress. But those preparations are nothing compared to what humans have done to themselves. Zethkar continued. New images appeared showing human population centers. Every civilian, every worker, every child over the age of 10 underwent regular training and enhancement procedures. The peaceful humans you encounter in diplomatic settings are all combat-ready, Zethkar explained. Every human civilian can become a soldier within hours. Every human settlement can become a fortress within days. Every human world can become a weapons factory within weeks. General Thoxeron's breathing apparatus whistled in disbelief. They've militarized their entire species. No, Zethkar corrected. They've created a species that can militarize instantly when threatened. There's a crucial difference. During peacetime, humans live normal lives. They create art, pursue science, raise families, explore philosophy. But they never lose the ability to transform into warriors. The hologram showed this dual nature in stunning detail. Human children playing in parks that could be converted to training grounds within hours, Human artists whose creative workshops contained equipment that could manufacture weapons. Human scientists whose research facilities could be retooled for military production at a moment's notice. I witnessed a demonstration of this capability, Zethkar continued. A human colony world with a population of 12 million received a simulated invasion alert. Within 4 hours, every civilian had reported to defensive positions, every factory had switched to military production, and every transportation hub had become a logistics center for armed resistance. The display showed the transformation in time-lapse. A peaceful agricultural world becoming an impregnable fortress so quickly that the process seemed almost magical. But the most sobering aspect of human contingency planning isn't their defensive preparations, Zethkar said quietly. It's their offensive capabilities. New images appeared that made several officers recoil. Weapons technology that seemed to push the boundaries of what was physically possible. Humans have developed what they call planet killers, Zethkar explained. Not just weapons that can destroy planets, but weapons that can eliminate entire star systems. They've created biological agents that can target any known species based on genetic markers. They've built machines that can convert entire worlds into automated weapon factories. The specifications displayed were beyond anything in the galactic military database. Weapons that could sterilize solar systems, viruses that could eliminate specific species galaxy-wide, self-replicating war machines that could spread across space consuming resources and building armies. These weapons exist, Zethkar said. They're built, tested, and ready for deployment. Humans could end any species in the galaxy within months if they chose to do so. Admiral Vextai's color had shifted to the pale blue of terror. Why are you telling us this? Why would humans allow this information to be shared? Zethkar's mandibles clicked in what might have been a smile. Because they want you to know. Humans learned during the Korthak War that showing restraint can be mistaken for weakness. They prefer that everyone understands exactly what they're choosing not to do. The hologram shifted to show current human diplomatic activities. The same species that possessed galaxy-ending weapons was using that power to mediate trade disputes and provide disaster relief. Every human diplomat, every human aid worker, every human trader carries the knowledge that their species could end all life in the galaxy if they chose to, Zethkar explained. But they also carry the commitment to use that power only to protect others. He paused, allowing this paradox to sink in. That's the final lesson about fighting humans, Zethkar continued. You're not just fighting a military force or even a species. You're fighting the conscious choice of the most powerful beings in the galaxy to allow you to exist. The display showed a message that appeared on all human military installations, a simple statement that captured the essence of human philosophy. We are not your enemies unless you make us your enemies. We are not your rulers unless you force us to rule. We are not your destroyers unless you leave us no choice. Choose wisely. Zethkar deactivated the holographic display and faced his audience one final time. 50 years ago, the Korthak Empire was the dominant military force in this sector, he said. We believed that strength came from the ability to conquer and destroy. We learned that true strength comes from the ability to conquer and destroy, but choosing not to. He gestured to encompass the entire room of alien military officers. All of you command fleets and armies. All of you have sworn to protect your species and expand your territories. But now you must also consider whether your ambitions are worth the risk of teaching humans that your species poses a threat to galactic peace. The silence stretched for long moments. My advice, as someone who has fought humans and lived to understand them, Zethkar concluded, is to remember that humans don't want to be your conquerors or your rulers. They want to be your friends and allies. But if you force them to choose between your survival and galactic peace, they will choose peace every time. He straightened to his full height, his forearms clasped behind his back. The war against humanity isn't a war you can win, Zethkar said simply. It's a war you can only avoid. And the price of avoidance is simple. Don't threaten others and humans will never threaten you. Admiral Vextai broke the silence that followed. Commander, what do you do now? How does a former enemy find purpose in a galaxy dominated by those who defeated him? Zethkar's compound eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the room. I serve as a reminder, he replied. A living example of what humans offer to those who choose peace over conquest. I help other species understand that cooperating with humans isn't surrender, it's evolution. He moved toward the chamber's exit, then paused. The galaxy is safer, more prosperous, and more peaceful than it has ever been, because humans chose to be protectors rather than conquerors. That choice wasn't weakness. It was the ultimate expression of strength. With that, Commander Zethkar left the chamber, leaving behind an audience of military leaders who would never again view warfare, diplomacy, or the nature of true power in quite the same way. In the silence that followed his departure, each officer contemplated the same question. In a galaxy where the most powerful species use their strength to protect rather than dominate, what kind of civilization did they want their own species to become?